Welcome to our activity where I'm gonna introduce you to FRQs, free response questions, and we're gonna talk a little bit about the writing verbs. So the different types of writing you're gonna need to do. We're gonna do a lot of writing over the course of this class, in part because the writing portion of the exam is worth about half of your grade. So we're gonna be doing a lot to try and get you ready for that. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dig in. Learning target for this video is just that you know how to write for the writing portion of the AP Human Geography exam in May. Okay, and success for that would be that you understand on at least a conceptual level how you will need to write for the exam. Okay, conceptual level just means that you pretty much get it, right? But you haven't actually practiced it yet to make sure. But you've got the idea. Okay. Second, that you are ready to begin practicing writing for the exam. And then last but not least, that you know how and at what length you need to write for different types of prompts. All right, so big picture. When we're looking at the AP exam in May, there's going to be 3 questions that are called FRQ questions. These are free response questions. So you're writing at length. Okay. Each of those 3 questions has 7 parts. There's a total of 75 minutes to write these 3 questions, okay, or these 3 prompts. Which averages out to about 25 minutes per question, or about 3.5 minutes per part of the question. Okay, don't panic. I'm just trying to give you the big picture idea, right? We're going to practice a lot with writing across this year. And the more you do it, the more you'll find that some parts will require a lot less than 3.5 minutes, and others might require a bit more. But you'll have enough time. Okay, you'll have enough time. It's really just about practice. And when we talk about free response, again, that means you're going to have to write at some length about whatever the theme for the question is. So each question is going to have a common theme, and it will incorporate either 0, 1, or 2 stimuli that you should expect to write about and incorporate. Okay, we've already been working with stimuli, by the way, the 4-level graphic organizers in some of the previous assignments. That's all about helping you to begin to think about how to analyze stimuli and answer questions. And we're going to keep doing that. You're going to be so sick of looking at pictures and maps and tables and things by the end of the class. Okay. Each of these FRQs, so each one of the 3, will cover 2 or more units from the course. And for the ones that do have stimuli, at least a few of the questions, or at least a few of the parts, will require you to directly reference that stimuli. And usually they'll ask you to do that in some way. Okay, so we'll dig into that more. We'll practice with that. But again, I just want to give you that big picture idea of what this is going to look like. Where are we going? Right? So you know the destination. All right, so we've got 5 different kinds of writing verbs, and we're going to begin with this assignment just with practicing. Okay, so we're just going to practice. They have 5 different kinds that they're going to pick from when crafting their prompts, right? When crafting the parts of the questions. And each one is different and they have different lengths of writing you should aim for. Okay. The assignment for today is really just to have you working with those types of writing and the length by having you talk about your favorite ice cream flavor. Okay. Or flavors, really, because you'll need 2. Next unit, we're going to start digging much more into actual content. So the idea of this is really just to introduce you to it. Okay. And you'll find this table, by the way, that's on the slide at the top of the page for the assignment. Sorry about that. All right. So our 5 different types of writing verbs are compare, define, describe, explain, and identify. So for compare, you're going to write roughly 3 to 5 sentences, and you're going to provide a description or explanation of similarities and or differences, or both. You can do both if you want to. Okay. But here's the thing, and this catches kids every single year, right? I go through and score FRQs for College Board. And every year, so many kids miss points because they don't talk about both of the items being compared. Okay, it's not enough to say something about one item and imply it about the other. You have to address both items, right? Cookies and cream ice cream has Oreo cookie chunks in it, whereas chocolate chip ice cream just has chocolate chips. So see what I did there where I addressed both items? Okay, you have to be specific. You have to be specific. Define. Just give a definition. That's all you need. 1 sentence, maybe 2. You don't even need an example if you don't want to. But you are absolutely going to have to know your vocabulary, and that's another thing. Okay. So there's a lot of vocabulary for this course, and you gotta know it. All right, so describe. This is where you're going to provide the relevant characteristics of a specific topic. And this last year, right, when I was doing this in early June scoring exams, what we were doing with the describe is that you could give the definition plus an example. So it's not enough to give me a definition for a describe point, but you have to give me an example in order to get that describe point. So you'll see it's a little bit longer, right? The define is 1 to 2 sentences. The describe is 2 to 3. Explain, right? This is another one where we're looking for depth. So we want to really see you dig into things a little bit more. And so you're going to provide information about how or why a relationship, pattern, position, or outcome occurs using evidence and or reasoning. So how and why something happens, but you've got to make sure that you're talking about the why and the outcome. All right, so you want to include a because clause. And that because clause might start with the word because, but it also might start with something like resulting in. Okay, but either way, you're pushing yourself to give those results. That's going to be the explain piece. That's what's going to put you over the top for that. Okay, that's where you're going to get your credit. Explain does have a cousin that makes you go a little more in depth, and it's explain the degree to which. Okay, so I didn't put it on my table here because it's still an explain prompt, but it's explain the degree to which. And when you see one like that, which we will, right, you want something like a high degree or a low degree or a moderate degree plus the explanation. And at least in 2024, what they did was prompted kids with those phrases high degree, moderate degree, low degree to remind them to include that as part of the explanation. Okay, so the last one of our writing verbs is actually the easiest. Okay, it's identify. And to identify something is just to indicate or provide information about a specified topic without elaboration or explanation. You'll often see these as perhaps maps that you've got to read, right? So maybe they give you a world map of agricultural, women's participation in agriculture, right? They did this a few years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago now. And they're going to ask you to identify a country in which women, more than 90% of women participate in agriculture, right? And so they'll give you a whole world map, and you'll have to read the map and figure out what one of the countries are, okay? But it could be as long as 1 to 2 sentences, can be as short as a few words or even a single word, right? And we do give credit, by the way, oftentimes on an identify for a single word. Okay. So identify is short, sweet, to the point. And that's what I was talking about, that and the define, when I said some of them are going to take you a lot less time. Others that explain, that compare, they're going to take you potentially a little more time than the 3.5 minutes. So it'll end up balancing itself out. All right, so to wrap things up, some tips and tricks for the writing. Okay, length matters in the sense that you can write too little for the longer verbs. Okay, your goal is to write as much as you need to, perhaps a bit extra, but not too much because you're worried about time. Okay, so you're aiming for that, you know, baby bear or that Goldilocks point where things are just right. Okay, you can sometimes talk yourself into extra points on the exam by clarifying an idea or concept, right? That's another way that length can matter. Give a good example if you're not sure if you're explaining a concept correctly, because if you're borderline and your example's spot on, you'll get credit, and that matters. Okay. Time matters in the sense that you do have a finite amount of it. Okay, so you'll want to practice with the timing over the course of the year, and I built some of that in. Some of the Canvas assignments are timed, even the formative ones, just to give you some practice with that. Okay. But you could do that even with this assignment if you're worried about it. You could start practicing with the timing, right? Just set yourself a timer on your phone or a kitchen timer. Okay, right? Do like 3.5 minutes apart, or maybe you do 2 minutes for the shorter writing prompts and 4 minutes for the longer ones. Okay. You want a few minutes when you're writing FRQs, no more than about 5, okay, per FRQ, to review your writing, to do some pre-writing, to add or subtract as needed. Okay. For this specific assignment, and really for any written assignments that we do all year, especially the FRQs, write it in blue or black ink. Those are pretty much the most common types of pens. If you go snag a pen out of your pen cup at home, it's probably blue or black. Okay, because you got to use ink on the exam, and they want you to use the blue or the black. Okay, if you goof something up, just cross it out, please. Okay, I won't read it, I promise. Or at least I won't score it. I might go ahead and read it if you just draw a single line, just to see what you were thinking. Okay. And when you take your FRQ or you take your AP exam in May, neither will the folks scoring the exam. Okay. But you're not allowed to use whiteout on the exam. So get in the habit of just like crossing things out. And a single line is fine for that. You can certainly do more. But if you're one of my kids for whom neatness is a thing, and I know that you're out there, I see you, right? Single line will keep it fairly neat, but still indicate that you don't want me to score something. All right, last tip or trick as we get further into this course, right? The best way to prepare for this part of the exam, truly the best way to prepare, is to make sure that you know the content thoroughly, okay? That you know your stuff. So make extra time to study, right? Go the extra mile, reread things as you need to, and maybe you won't for everything. Hopefully you won't for everything. Right? Do at least some of the optional activities that I suggest as we go through, or ones that you come up with on your own. So my lists are not going to be exhaustive, I promise. They're definitely not. And there's a lot of good ideas out there for activities that you could do, and a lot of things that your friends or your family members might have that'll work in terms of studying and familiarizing yourself with content. Make sure that you're doing that stuff as you go. All right? Let me know if you have questions once you dig in, and otherwise, I'll see you in class.